Hey guys! Yay! Holiday season is almost here, and in between getting fat and spending a smaller fortune on gifts, this hopefully means a little more gaming time for everyone. To celebrate, we will have a packed schedule this week, starting with a review of a British icon, the Chieftain in Armored Warfare, followed by finally another CV replay in World of Warships, taking a closer look at how to command the bow effectively these days. And we will close the week off with another famous Brit, though this time from World of Tanks, that nasty Bishop self-propelled gun. Well, actually there is something else planned as well. Finally, after a lot of preparations, everything is set for my first ever Twitch stream, which will take place on this very Thursday. I plan to do it in 2 installments, from 2 to 5 PM Central European time, and then a late night stream from 10 PM to 1 in the morning. If you will be around, come and have a look at it, whether you would like to chat or just watch. Everyone will be most welcome. But shameless self-promotion aside, let's not keep our star guest waiting any longer. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to an immensely famous main battle tank, the Chieftain. Now, the layout of this review will be pretty similar to how I usually do things in World of Tanks. First, a look at the historical background, followed by some number crunching and comparison to its competition in the same tier, together with some juicy gameplay. If you want to jump ahead, the timestamp stands ready in the description below. If, however, you would like to stick around for the background of this vehicle, you are in for a treat. This machine has quite a few tales to tell for sure. The Chieftain, designated to FV4201, is a Cold War British main battle tank that was in service from the mid-1960s right away up until the mid-1990s, when it was replaced by the Challenger 1. During these impressive 30 years, a total of around 4,400 units were produced, which by the way is a lot from a Cold War tank, and these were both used extensively by the British forces and also exported in larger numbers to various Middle Eastern countries. Stopping here just for a minute, if you don't know what the term main battle tank means, first of all check out my video on the M103 in World of Tanks, and secondly, it's basically a concept that pairs heavy tank protection and firepower with medium tank mobility, with the help of new technologies, among other composite armor. But back to the Chieftain. Upon its introduction, this machine was widely regarded as the most powerful combat tank among the Western nations, and it maintained its leading position right up until the 1980s, when the Leopard 2 series was introduced. As for its specifications, while this was actually a direct continuation of the Centurion design, the main ideology behind the tank was in sharp contrast to the usual British tank design. Traditionally, the Brits valued speed and mobility above everything else, while the Chieftain was put together with heavy armor in mind and some serious firepower to go with it. The reason for this drastic change in ideology was the technological race that unfolded during the Cold War. The Centurion, back when it was introduced, was a great response to the formerly superior German tanks, but the post-World War II designs quickly outgunned it. Quite similarly, the Conqueror heavy tank using a 120mm gun was a direct response on the Soviet threat that was imposed by tanks such as the IS-3, but again it was not a flexible enough solution. The goal with the Chieftain was to combine the mobility of the Centurion with the firepower of the Conqueror, and the result was a huge success. The Chieftain was faster than the Centurion, could uphold its top speed for longer than the Leopard 1, did outgun its competition with its brand new 120mm gun, and even better, this was actually the first tank to have composite armor add-ons for improved protection against the more and more popular anti-tank shape charges. It's no wonder then that, apart from being used extensively in the Korean War and the Indo-Pakistan wars, it was also exported in larger numbers, mostly to Middle Eastern countries. The largest non-British operator was Iran, with over 700 Chieftains delivered, followed by Jordan and Kuwait. Now, interestingly enough, Iraq had a larger number of these main battle tanks as well, despite not being on the export list originally. The reason for this is that during the Iran-Iraq war, they actually did manage to capture a larger number of chieftains from Iran, and we are talking here up to 100 tanks, the numbers being a bit inconclusive, which then they used as part of their armed forces right up until the 1990s. Interesting story actually. This incident took place during Operation Nasr in January 1981, when part of the Iran-Iraq war, 3 armored Iranian regiments, boasting a large number of chieftains, advanced on the invading Iraqi forces. They did, however, fail to spot a resourceful Iraqi trap, which proved to be disastrous. The invading army trapped the enemy forces in a muddy area, ambushing from both sides and from the front as well, while maximizing their chances in these conditions by basically digging their tanks into the muddy ground that would have made maneuvering difficult anyway. Now that's definitely one way of getting yourself fooled down. The Iranian losses were catastrophic, with a large chunk of the forces being decimated or simply left in the mud after running out of gas and/or ammunition during this massive 4-day tank battle. Iraq later recovered these vehicles and added them to their own armored forces for the years to come. So, quite an impressive machine this Chieftain was. Let's have a look at how the in-game version actually compares to the other Tier 5 main battle tanks. But before we dive into the numbers, just a quick word on how you can get your hands actually on one of these, as even unlocking them differs from the usual XP grind. The Chieftain has its own line in the Shishkin tech tree, and to unlock it you must block a certain amount of damage playing any other vehicle in the same tech tree. This is certainly unique, and I think due to this setup this will be the first Tier 5 machine many will unlock, as on paper you can unlock this beast even by playing much lower tier machines a lot. Now, looking at the numbers, we can see that at the moment there are 5 very characteristic MBTs at Tier 5, and the Chieftain definitely stands out amongst them, at least in some points. Just a quick remark by the way, all the numbers are for fully upgraded tanks without any retrofits. Starting with the gun, you will command a very effective 120mm that really delivers in all its aspects. You have a very healthy 7 rounds per minute rate of fire, that equals an 8.5 second reload by the way, combined with a very solid 3 second base aim time and an average good 0.13 degrees accuracy. What's even better is that you have a gun depression of 10 degrees that really allows you to use the terrain to your advantage, and oh boy, you will need to. But more on that a little bit later. So, regarding the gun, it's all good news, isn't it? Well, the gun is nice, but how about if I tell you that there are actually main battle tanks with over 30% better DPM than you at your own tier? Pretty brutal, isn't it? Now the reason for this lays in the ammunition that you use, or better to say, the ammunition that you can't use, as you won't get any heat shells in this machine, I'm afraid. Now that's quite a pity, as it really cuts back your potential DPM when you have to fire AP at lightly armored targets as well. It's a little frustrating to see all those shell over penetrations, as you just see the loss potential without having the means to do anything about it. Your HE shells are really only there for the toughest of jobs, with only 20mm of penetration and only 305 average damage even when penetrating. You really can't hope for miracles with them. So this means AP is the way to go with the Chieftain, and even if you have the worst penetration with only 300mm, or are really outgunned by alpha damage by the Russian T-72 with only having 388 average damage at your disposal, thanks to your great gun, the DPM on the AP shells is actually still quite respectable. And thanks to your other characteristics, you actually will be able to maintain the attack in most situations, contrary to some of the other MBTs at this tier. And here I'm of course talking about armor protection, and boy oh boy do we have a mixed bag here. First of all, your health pool is fantastic for being a tier 5, and that means that you will be able to soak up quite a few hits before having to really worry. As for the armor profile, both your hull and your turret are made of rolled plate armor, so you don't get any special protection against shape charges, I'm afraid. Now of course you will say, Wait a second, did you say that the Chieftain did get composite armor add-ons? Well, yes it did, but the in-game version is based on the Mark V type of the Chieftain, which was basically the originally manufactured version, and composite armor was only added in some of the later versions. Sorry about that. But back to the actual protection. We have a really good news bad news kind of situation. Starting with the good one, the upgraded turret is absolutely fantastic with 454mm from the front, almost 200mm on both sides, and finally a measly 57mm in the back. The problem, as so often, is of course with your hull that's only 150mm thick in the front, 81 in the side and 46mm in the rear. Now, considering that all the same tier main battle tanks have excessive of 260mm of penetration on their heat shells, you really have to be careful to hide that massive weak hull of yours if you want to survive. And that might be sometimes tricky, as you are the most sluggish of the bunch with only a 9-second acceleration time to 32 km per hour, though the top speed of almost 49 km per hour is absolutely fine for a main battle tank. Turret traverse is dead average with just over 19 degrees per second, and vision is kinda alrightish with 360 meters by default. So then, it's quite obvious, isn't it, how you have to play this thing? T29 playstyle, anyone? Look for a strong cooldown position and use your amazing turret and excellent gun depression to frustrate the enemy players up to the high heavens. Considering that this machine is really a one-trick pony and that you don't even have to worry about your ammo selection, this then is really an ideal choice for anyone who would like to get into the medium tiers of the main battle tanks. If you manage to put it in a strong position, you will be a force to be reckoned with. I find it relatively easy to finish on top of the PvE result screens on hard difficulty, most of the times even without having access to heat shells, and I did manage to do up to 12,000 damage in this machine, but I think we had enough PvE content in the background already. Now, if you have a really cool PvP match on record on the other hand and would like to get it featured, don't hesitate to send a file over. Now, if you are new to the Chieftain and are wondering what skills and equipment you should use, let me give you a quick rundown on the setup that I think would suit you the best. And I can't stress enough how important choosing the right upgrades in armored warfare is. Just wait until you see what stats I have compared to the fully upgraded but unpimped Chieftain. Starting with your commander's choice, I do only have a limited selection of them unlocked at the moment, but from these boys and girls I can wholeheartedly recommend Viktor Kirsanov. If you look at the bonuses I did choose for him, they synergize really well with our expected playstyle. To give you a few examples, reduced reload time after bouncing, well, that's perfect for someone who expects to bounce quite a lot of shells while being hull down. Increased module damage after getting an overmatch. Well, if you remember, we will get overmatches all the time due to our ammunition loadout. Now, regarding the crew skills, you can select a maximum of 2 skills for the 3 crew that you have. For the driver, I took off-road driving to combat the weaker acceleration, but perhaps the best would be to choose smooth ride to limit the bloom while peeking over ridges, and definitely spin to win to improve your really bad hull traverse. For the gunner, I suggest quick throw to improve the aim time and perhaps shoot from the hip to help again with the peekaboo over ridge lines. And finally for the loader, definitely rapid fire for the improved loading time and perhaps explosive shells for improved module damage, as I yet have to see an ammo rack explosion in this game. Next is your ammunition loadout, and as advised, apart from a few safety HE shells, really put everything into AP. Coming up are the retrofits, which are super important. You can unlock, apart from the universal slot, 2 armor and 1 firepower slots on this machine, giving you 4 massive upgrade possibilities. Now, the universal slot, I did go with an advanced thermal sleeve for improved reload times, and for the designated firepower slot I did choose a magnetic actuator for increased damage and aim time combo. As for the 2 armor slots, for one I did choose internal hull reinforcement for a massive increase in hit points, and an improved spore liner that gives further HP bonus and also improved crew saves against injuries. As for consumables, well, it's the usual stuff, so let's continue to jump over to the part where I can show you why it's really worth doing all of this. Now, do you remember that our base DPM was just over 2700 with AP shells? Well, after the retrofits and skills, I managed to push this up with 20% to over 3200 damage per minute, and then I don't even have the really cool stuff unlocked. The same goes for our hit points. Originally, we have about 1800 HP, but after the upgrades, that jumps to over 2000, which is well over 13% increase once again. And that's exactly why you have to spend a little time on making the right choice for your machine and your playstyle. So, that was my quick review of the Chieftain, this iconic Tier 5 main battle tank. I hope you did like it. If you did, thank you for considering giving it a like or sharing it. Still this week, the next video will be a little guide on the Bogue in today's waters in World of Warships, and then we will close the week with a look at the Bishop in World of Tanks. And if you have time, don't forget to tune in on Thursday for a bit of World of Tanks Twitch action. Take care guys, and I look forward to seeing you again in one of the next videos.